Welcome, everyone. My name is Esther Lee, President of Chinese American Heritage Foundation. Today, our panel discussion is Asian American Women's Empowerment. In 2021, CAHF has sponsored Miss Chinese Boston. Our mission is to develop goodwill ambassador for our local and national Chinese American communities by guiding young women through a personal, professional, and cultural development program that encourages a showcase of oneself in her best light. On 19 December 2021, we crowned our first ever Miss Chinese Boston, Vanessa Guo, and she won the title Miss Chinatown USA 2022 Third Princess and Miss Community Service. Vanessa was born in Beijing. She graduated with double majors in statistics and music from UC Berkeley and a master's degree at MIT. Now she works as a consultant in Boston. She is heavily involved with social impact initiative. As MIT alum, she co-founded Startup Connect, an event series aiming to build a startup ecosystem that fosters meaningful connection and conversations. She also likes to use performing talent to promote Chinese culture on stage. Let us welcome Vanessa, sharing her experience before we start the panel discussion.
Thank you, Esther.
Hang on. Let me spotlight you. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Esther, for the introduction. I am very humbled and honored to just share about my experience from both Miss Chinese Boston as well as Miss Chinatown USA this past year in this platform, especially in the light of AAPI month. And I hope everyone is really ready to enjoy the long weekend as I am. So I guess I would just give a brief introduction about myself and then sort of talk through both my MCB and MCU experience and also talk about some of my personal reflections. So my name is Vanessa Guo and I currently am working as a consultant. And before consultant, I sort of came to US just for my undergrad degree. So I was born and raised in Beijing, China, and then I came here for my undergrad, study statistics and music, which is a bit untraditional because I wanted to keep performing arts as part of my life, but then also discover the research and quantitative aspects of research. And then afterwards, I moved from West Coast to East Coast to pursue my master's degree. And afterwards, I've been staying in Boston since. I competed in Miss Chinese Boston this past year, 2021, and represented Boston in the National Miss Chinatown USA 2021. And personally for me, I think this is a very great opportunity for me to reflect on my self-identity, what it means for me to be a Chinese in America. Also just learn about the Chinese history and also experience how Chinese culture has evolved throughout the past few years. And then also just amazed, just constantly being wowed by the amazing, intelligent and inspiring women that I've encountered, interacted throughout this whole journey. Yeah, so I think I will just pick a few highlights since we have limited time, and then I will stay until the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions about my pageant experience, I'm happy to stay on during the discussion. Yeah. So I'll probably start with my experience in the Miss Chinese Boston. So for me, in this Miss Chinese Boston, it is a whole 6 weeks program that covers topics such as cultural awareness, what it means to be a Chinese in US, and also as well as pageant, also the pageant components of the things, preparing through fitness, form, talent, as well as just preparing for the wardrobe. And personally, I would have not being able to represent Boston to compete in Miss Chinatown USA if it were not for this Miss Chinese Boston program. So there are roughly 10 sessions throughout the training program, and we sort of like started off with like aligning like what the goals are in this Miss Chinese Boston program. And then we sort of like dive deeper into some of the social impact aspects of the things. And I think my coaches, both Dawn and Lianna, really challenged me about, like talk about or think through the social issues that I've been really cared about and reflect recently. And so they've been really helpful in guiding me through the reflection. And so, yeah, and so like basically we've gone through like social impact of the things, and then like also preparing for the Q&A sessions in the Miss Chinatown USA component. So they've been like throwing me with very like random but interesting questions, and then just put me on the spot to think how I can remain calm, poised, and graceful while like thinking on my feet. Yeah, so that has been really helpful, like training me through Miss Chinatown USA. Yeah, and then there are also components of the Miss Chinese Boston program that guided me through preparing for the talent. So my talent at the time was vocal performance, but then I also wanted to like also combine my vocal talent with my string talent. So like I'm a violinist as well. And so they have been really helpful in helping me like shape through the form of the talent. And so in the end, we're able to find a song that can include both my opera performance talent as well as like violin, while not like sounding or appearing too dramatic on stage. So I performed Think of Me. So like sing solo opera at the beginning and then transition to violin. Yeah, so, and I would have not done this without like brainstorming with their help. Yeah. And then I would also just say that like throughout this process, I think my coaches as well as my sponsor, CHF, are really sort of like my mentors and big sisters. Also when I'm like going through my wardrobe preparation. So when I'm preparing for my evening gown, so they're really like my big sisters, like mentoring me, like you would look graceful or you will look good on stage with this form of dress, and also like telling me, also like coaching me how to pose and stuff. And so just overall going through this whole preparation while working full-time as a consultant, could not have been able to like finish all of them without their help. Yeah, so I would say like my experience in Miss Chinese Boston have been really positive, and I would say also like throughout this process, it also like challenges me to think through some of the topics that I don't think I necessarily would have the opportunity or like would have the time to think through. So I would definitely recommend people or girls who are interested in going through just bring the best version of herself and understand more about Chinese culture, the Chinese American ecosystem, and how to give back to the community. And I would definitely say that Miss Chinese Boston is a very good program. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. We're going to see you during the Q&A a little bit later. So we should have two moderators today, but unfortunately, Dawn Cheung, she actually has a very bad cold and she lost her voice. But however, I still would like to introduce her because she is actually our Miss Chinese Boston program manager. So Dawn is a career service manager at Ada Developers Academy, and she is born and raised in Seattle. Dawn considers herself 1.5 generation Chinese American and loved the duality and her identity. It is this journey of identity that has inspired her work in social work and career coaching. She is very passionate about advancing social issues around the Asian American community and raising awareness around our narrative and culture. And I just want to say, Dawn has been working a lot on this Miss Chinese Boston. She put a lot of effort and time in this program, and I really wish that she could have able to join us, but she lost her voice. So I'm sure we'll be able to see her another time. So now today our moderator will only be Lianna Louie. She actually is our Miss Chinese Boston program director, and she worked hand in hand with Dawn. And actually, this program would not be successful without both of them. So I want to thank both of them here. So Lianna is the account manager at Uber. Armed with an MBA in social impact, Lianna has been a lifelong advocate for social responsibility and specializes in building bridges between corporation and AAPI community by way of giving back. While her days is currently at Uber headquarters, her nonprofit experience spans over 7 organizations from coast to coast, with causes ranges from racial and gender equality to Asian American leadership. So without further ado, let me bring Lianna.
Hello.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Esther. I just wanted to expand a little bit more on what's kind of my motivations for, I'm the founder and the director of Miss Chinese Boston, and I did that because I feel like a lot of us grow up with this dual identity of being Chinese American, and figuring out the right balance is a struggle. And I feel like there needs to be more conversations about it. We need to make more connections with our fellow ladies about it, and figure out how we can work together to advance ourselves in this really complicated environment of America. So with that, I'm going to start introducing our panel. Really excited for everyone. Everyone's very accomplished, very well spoken, very educated. Starting with Chelsea. She is a San Francisco native and a former Miss Chinatown San Francisco. Though she's worked in tech in the past, she decided to pivot to the journey of entrepreneurship by taking over parents' restaurants in Chinatown. In 2020, Chelsea became the youngest board member of the San Francisco Chinese Chamber of Commerce. She continues to strive to give back to her Chinatown community and encourages the next generation to do the same. Next is Catherine. Catherine is the reigning Miss San Francisco of 2022. She's a proud graduate of the University of Southern California and works as a private wealth analyst at Goldman Sachs. Having faced a major health challenge, Catherine has transformed her experience into a health and wellness-based personal brand through social media and her webpage, developing her social impact initiative to be a champion of courage. Last but not least is Rose. She was raised in Houston, Texas, and has always been a proud member of the Chinese American community. Participating in her first pageant at the age of 18, she has held such titles as Miss Chinatown USA and Miss Chinese International. After completing her undergraduate degree at New York University, Rose then traveled to over 20 countries. Now she runs the family business, operating an online school providing holistic education, as well as is a real estate agent in the booming Houston market. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to jump right into questions. I'm going to first start off with, since we all have this common thread that of pageantry and our experience with pageantry, I want to ask everyone one learning that you've acquired through these type of experiences and how that has empowered you as a woman. I'm going to start with Chelsea.
Thank you, Lianna. So I grew up watching the Miss Chinatown USA pageant, as well as competed in it, and now I'm helping with the production of it. So I've learned so many things throughout the years with pageantry, but I think one of the things that I've learned that has empowered me as a woman is building confidence in myself, as well as helping other women build confidence, just showing them how to be a more confident version of themselves. Because I believe with confidence, you can better overcome judgment, love yourself, and become the best version of yourself, not only for pageants, but everyday life.
Catherine?
Yeah, to echo what Chelsea said, I think it really is about courage and confidence. I actually entered into the pageant scene because I used to be a very shy, very awkward 13-year-old who could barely pick up the phone without having a quiver in my voice. I I think through pageantry, it's not just about standing on stage, it's really discovering, here are 13 or now 22 years of your life that you've spent accumulating all of these talents, all of these skill sets. And I think pageantry quite literally has shown me the power of my own voice. And so that's the basis of my social impact initiative, which is to be a champion of courage and to help other people find their own voice in a world that's very confusing sometimes.
I love that.
So for me, I think since pageant itself is a competition, and oftentimes, especially growing up, we tend to compare ourselves with other people at the time. So I think joining a pageant really taught me how to navigate competition in a very healthy way, because I was able to kind of compare and contrast. For example, like in one of the pageants that I did, I remember there was like this group of girls who were very like competitive, and they were very serious about winning the title. And so they would be kind of secretive about what cheapao they were wearing or what talent they were doing. And then I remember, since we would split up in different groups and we would have like roomies with other contestants, for my room, we decided to work together and we decided to help each other out. So instead of comparing ourselves with each other, we decided to show each other our talents and give constructive criticism and practice Q&A together. And what ended up being really surprising was the really competitive girls, who a lot of people thought would place really high, we ended up placing first, second, and third in our room. And so I think that experience showed me how working together will always help us be stronger than if we were to pit ourselves against each other. So that was my pageant experience.
I think that's really great and beautiful because, and I love how pageantry has really, I feel like changed really in the past decade. We see like the Miss America rebrand to 2.0, and we see, even the USA brand to like pageantry reimagined. And it's really more about, supporting each other and doing like the best of you and the best version of you, rather than like taking someone else down so that you can be on top. And I think it trickles down from a lot of like historical behaviors, but our generation is hopefully changing it for the better. We're going to stay on pageant for just one more question, but this is for Chelsea specifically. Given that you're on the Miss Chinatown USA Board of Directors, what are your hopes to take the program to the next level, specifically within women empowerment?
Yeah, I mean, I have the honor of being one of the very few women in Chinese Chamber of Commerce, which is made up of mostly older men. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to make a positive impact on the Miss Chinatown USA pageant, as well as the community. One of my hopes is to have more women in leadership roles in our organization and for the pageant, and for the next generation to be able to continue the Miss Chinatown USA legacy. One of the things that I felt really strongly about and discussed with a lot of members about was changing one of the Miss Chinatown USA qualifications to from being just half Chinese, just on your dad's side, to just being half Chinese regardless if it's from your mom or dad. I think regardless of whether your mom or dad is Chinese, potential candidates should still have the same opportunity to apply for this experience and to be able to learn and embrace their cultural background. Thankfully, this actually got passed in one of our meetings, so I think we're slowly moving towards the right direction. Also to continue to provide more opportunities for contestants to make a positive impact in the community and amplify their voices and platform.
That's great. I think those are really great steps, and it is more accepting for everyone that is Chinese. There shouldn't be kind of a I think what you're doing is great. Next question, I'm going to point this towards Rose and Catherine. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your life and career path? And I do want to focus a little bit about maybe like a female leader or role model that you have looked up to and some advice that they've given and how that has shaped your life and career path.
Who's first?
Rose,
Catherine?
you can go.
Okay, I'll go first then. So after Lianna briefly mentioned this in my intro, I did do a lot of traveling after I graduated. So the reason why I was able to have that opportunity was because I was shadowing my mentor during that time. And she's a very successful businesswoman and leader. And I grew up knowing her because she was also a role model for my mom. And so I thought that was really special too, how my mom's role model could also be mine, and while my mom was also my role model. So I think just as a female, we tend to get a lot of our role models from people that we look up to. So the one thing that she had taught me when I was really young was, I guess I will say this in Chinese since I learned it in Chinese, but it was 事情发生的好坏不重要，重要的是我们的想法、看法和做法. So to kind of translate that, it meant that no matter what kind of circumstance we're put in, or no matter what experience we go through, whether it be positive or negative, we have the power to change it depending on how we decide to react to it. So that was something that I brought into both when I was going through school and also when I was in pageants, because like one example of that would be when I was in one of the pageants, I had a car accident, and so I wasn't able to do my talent. So during that time, I was really stressed out because the whole reason why I decided to do pageants was because I was a dancer, and so I felt like my talent was my strong suit, and so it felt like my strength was kind of ripped away from me. But during that time, my mom reminded me about how this was an opportunity for me to strengthen my weaknesses instead of seeing it as feeling like I was seeing it as a setback. So that is something that my role model had taught me, and something that I've been bringing into when I face all obstacles in life.
Yeah, I really love what Rose said, and I think over the past 2.5 years with COVID, we've all really felt the term that resilience is a key driver in every single person's life. And so for me, pageantry was definitely first about finding my own courage, finding my own voice, and I had never quite experienced that so vividly until my first year of college when unfortunately I lost my home to the Tubbs Fire in Northern California, and then in the same month span I discovered I had incurred a severe health complication with hypothyroidism. And so for me it was like my world had kind of shattered, and I had no idea really how to navigate it, because up until then it seemed like a very clear path of, do well in high school, make sure you build lifelong friends, get to college, think about your next career path, and then all of a sudden it's like you have all of these elements, but then you have a health setback and the sense of being lost. But I think resilience was something that my mother really taught me. She is definitely an iron woman and someone I admire to this day, but she said, have an open heart and have an open mind. And I think something as simple as that really carried me through the next 4 years of my life. And it really helped me to not see a health setback as a detriment, but actually a chance to restart and see it as a learning opportunity. So I've kind of carried that mentality through graduating college, starting my first career here in a very male-dominated industry, but to do it with grace and to do it with, the willingness to be articulate and push through the difficult times. And I guess in addition to my mom, someone who I've really come to look up to is my mentor when I did the program called CEO for 1 month. I got to shadow Corinne Repoche, who is as fierce and fabulous of a woman as you can imagine, but she helps to run the United States division of the Adecco Group, which is one of the world's largest staffing and headcount solutions organizations. And she again reiterated that your voice truly matters. And even if I was a fresh college graduate sitting in front of a boardroom of executives, my ideas mattered, and to never question that. And so that has truly carried through to my career now, where I work on a team of 13 guys, and all of them very, very vivacious and very outspoken, but at the same time, I know how to hold my ground, how to do it elegantly, and do it in a very assertive but not aggressive way. So again, just reiterating both resilience and the power of your own voice.
That's really great. Thank you so much for sharing. It's very inspiring. And I am curious how, maybe this is, I'll save this for Q&A later, but like one open question I have is kind of like, how do you navigate figuring that out from like being raised traditionally Asian and then like eventually finding your voice, right? Because it took me a while, I'll say that. Okay, so the next question is a tad spicy, but the bamboo ceiling is a term derived from the term glass ceiling, and it's used to describe those specific challenges that Asian Americans face in the corporate world with breaking into upper management. So with your career path, what are your thoughts on the bamboo ceiling, and have you faced this barrier? And if so, how did you overcome it? And I'll start with Chelsea.
Yeah, I definitely faced it when I used to work in corporate, and even now as a businesswoman. Back in my corporate job, 90% of upper management was white, even though we had a lot of Asian representation in the company. And I feel like it's probably that way for a lot of the companies. And I tried to break this barrier by joining the diversity committee when it first started, to have these open conversations regarding these topics, to have Asian representation, analyzing the employee data, and just brainstorming ways to create a more inclusive and diverse environment across all levels and put that into action. So I think many companies have these diversity committees and I would encourage people to join if they really want to make a change or create one themselves, and be that Asian representation and let their voice be heard and break these barriers.
How about you, Rose?
So I'm gonna kind of go out on a limb and play a little bit. It is a spicy question, and when I was thinking about how to respond to this one, I'm gonna say something that might be a little bit risky, but I like to think that the ceiling doesn't actually exist. It's not to say that there's no prejudice against Asian Americans, or there's no, we don't encounter setbacks and challenges, but I think more so if we see it as the fact that every single person does, no matter what skin color. I think we all encounter different challenges, of course. And so there are specific challenges that are specific to us being Asian American. But I think when we think of a ceiling, it exists more in the mind than it does in reality. So I think what Chelsea was saying about how focusing on what we can be in control of, like what kind of actions can we take to change that, and kind of celebrating the fact that we're different from each other instead of seeing it as a limitation. So I think that is something that we can each do, that we can be in control of. And then when we use those actions to kind of prove other people wrong, or if other people say things that we don't agree with, using our actions to prove it to them. And then I think when other people see the results of our actions, there's nothing that they can really say. So I think like seeing those as opportunities rather than as a limitation would be the best way for us to counter it instead of like, I think like when we think of a ceiling, it's easy to think of it as an excuse almost, like, oh, because there's a ceiling preventing me from achieving what I want to do. It almost discourages us when we victimize ourselves that way.
Wow, that's tough to follow. But I agree. I think I will say sometimes being Asian American, and particularly Asian American female, it is difficult. I think we have it ingrained in ourselves that, hard work is one of our driving factors, but I think we also need to recognize how to advocate for ourselves. I recognized this in my first month in my career. I was like, I'm here to do a good job and that's it. But unless you almost from your own perspective feel like you're bragging about the things that you did, here's what I contributed to the team, here's how I'm trying to advocate for better recruitment solutions, here is how I'm trying to optimize our team's workflow and processes. People don't recognize that, and we can hope all we want that people will be able to read our minds, but that's never going to happen. But I think we are in unique positions where I think Asian Americans have truly fleshed out what it means to build a community. I just think back to growing up, all the potlucks that we would have with family and friends. It's not just your immediate family, but it's your extended family, your friends and neighbors who you truly want to see succeed. So I think we carry that in the same place in pageantry or in the workplace. Right now, I am helping to head the social media and recruitment solutions for Goldman. And I recognize on the floor there's a very obvious lack of diversity, but that's not to say that can't be fixed. It just simply means there's someone who needs to take up that mantle and to not be afraid to create a disruption. And moreover, I think, again, going back to pageantry, to see more and more Asian women on the stage really speak up and vocalize and have incredible platforms. I was saying, like, even posting on social media, like, all of the women in this forum are people that I've looked up to. I think to be able to see that and to be a part of this group is incredibly empowering. So we just need to expand upon that community even more.
Thank you. I think everyone made really great points. And I agree with everything. I mean, I think it's really finding and making sure we stand our ground, make our voices heard. And sometimes, are we really making our own bamboo ceiling? That's sometimes honestly a question that I ask myself, because I would look at other leaders in the community, specifically in the Asian community, and then also our own working styles and how do you advance that, but also be respectful. I think we all can agree it's kind of difficult to navigate. Now we have our last question, but as leaders and entrepreneurs, what advice do you have for our guests today about women empowerment, and what are what's something kind of actionable and something they can do within our community to move that agenda forward?
I'll go first. I mean, yeah, I think being a woman, especially in today's society, there's definitely a lot of challenges and a lot of like negativity, but I think one of the simplest things you can do to empower the women in our lives in the community is really just to lift each other up and support each other. I mean, even just today, I've learned a lot from Rose and Catherine, and everyone just being here today to support this event is already really empowering. So thank you all.
Go ahead, Rose.
All right. So I think that especially when it comes to, since we're talking specifically about women empowerment today, I think a lot of times when we think about like the feminist movement, it's a lot of it is about like, oh, women should be the same as men, or women should make the same amount of money as men, have the same opportunity as men. But I think that sometimes we need to have more of a balance and bring it back to focusing on what internally we can do. So I think allowing, like, how we can empower women is by reminding women about the power that they have within themselves, rather than what, like, I think the negativity comes from when we feel like we can't control what's happening to us. So a lot of these things, like, yes, like on a societal level, there's a lot of factors that we cannot control. But to empower women is reminding each other, like, what can we control then? And then I think also reminding that we should listen more to our inner voice and our inner intuition in terms of how we want to live a fulfilling life. Because I think now, since we are pushing the whole like being very career focused type women, I think that what if a woman actually, like, her sense of fulfillment comes from being you know, having children and being in charge of her family. I think that we should also empower women who want to have that sort of life instead of a career. So I think more about like getting women to listen to their inner voice in terms of what they would like to do with their lives, and then as a greater community, having support for recognizing that there's different nuances for each woman and what each woman would like for her own life. So I think that's a way that we can really empower each individual.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot of, at the end of the day, it's also for women who've done programs like these, pageants or career oriented, or even just like leadership webinars, to lift up other women, because I think, again, it goes back to that sense of competition. I think women are particularly attuned to self-reflection, and often I even find myself thinking like, oh, was my tone of voice, did that come off, gentle enough but firm enough? Was the message clear enough? But at the same time, we also have to help people, again, find their own voice. So I think for people, anyone who goes through the program, um, it's about passing the torch on. It's not just about your crowning moment or your 365 days of glory. It's about, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? How do you want to amplify this program such that the next person who takes on whatever spot you have, career, pageant, anything, how can they expand upon that rather than reinventing the wheel? And more so, I really like the idea of helping every single individual find their own social impact or initiative, or what they want to be a champion of. I was speaking with my mentor, and I kind of spilled my entire life story to him, and I thought, oh, I'm a champion of, a girl who can do it all, who can be well-rounded, who can be a career-oriented person. And he's like, is that really what you really want to focus on, just that career element? And I was like, well, I'm very passionate about all of these other things. And so at the end of a 4-hour long discussion, we came down and boiled it to, you are a champion of courage. You have lived experience where your courage has been questioned. You've even questioned your own courage. So how do you want to translate that from just being a personal journey into a platform to help other people relate to it, and help them find their own voice? So I think, having these conversations will be incredibly empowering for people who are maybe just on their own journey of self-discovery, and in terms of how to empower themselves. So I think it's both how can we externally empower other people, but how can we help the women themselves empower themselves? So
those are amazing, excuse me, messages. And I'm really glad that all of you made the time to be on this webinar. I truly believe in connections and conversations. And if we keep sharing our own stories, then I really think we can go that much further as like individuals, as Asian American women, as just, people that can make a difference in the world. So I'm going to turn it back over now to Esther. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A.
Okay, Lianna, I'm just going to keep you with us in case there any Q&A that you want to join in, because you have been in the pageant before as well, and we need you with our women's empowerment discussion. Vanessa, you ready to come in? And Catherine, can you just stay a little bit, or
yes, I may hop off a little bit early, but I will stick around.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let me add Vanessa. So Lianna, I remember just now you said you have a question that you would want to ask our panelists, but you say you'll wait until when it's Q&A time. Unfortunately, I didn't write it down. Do you still recall what the question is? I know it's a very good question.
Oh God.
And I was going to unmute myself and say, just let them answer it.
Oh, I feel like, yeah, I had to stop myself because I feel like it could potentially take a lot of time, and it's also a little bit spicy. And so the question was how you navigated going. So I will just speak from my personal experience. I grew up pretty, Chinese American, and I was taught, head down, do hard work, everything will come to you. I figured out after years and years of kind of searching and figuring out like what did I actually want to do, I would say pretty late in life that that's not really the way it is and how it really works in like corporate America or really America in general. As the girls have mentioned, you have to be pretty outspoken. You have to stand your ground, but obviously do it in a graceful manner. So I'm kind of curious of how some of you have navigated that, and I'm curious if your journey was similar to mine. I feel like I didn't really break out my shell honestly till I left Seattle, my hometown, and I moved to Boston. So that was kind of a long question, but I hope you got the gist of that one.
Catherine, you need to leave first. Do you want to just make a little comment on that?
Sure, I'll jump in. Great question, by the way, and it's something that I'm continually learning. I think sometimes when we feel as though, like your work quality or people are questioning you and your ability, I think sometimes we take on a very defensive mechanism or defensive attitude. But I think at the end of the day, I forget who said it, but it's one thing to put your head down and to prove you are just as qualified as you say you are on paper or as you've expressed to people. But I think again it goes back to the point of you need to verbalize and advocate for yourself. And advocating for yourself doesn't mean bragging and saying, I am the best person at doing this, I am the greatest, no one can replace me. But it's simply stating a fact of what you have contributed. And if you have a fantastic mentor, I think to that point, like having a mentor in work or in life is incredibly important, because these are the people who are not afraid to tell you, you're not speaking up for yourself. Why aren't you doing this? And to help you really think through that. For me, before, that was my issue, where I was like, oh, I do good work. It's on email. There's a trace. It's, that's more than enough proof. But he said, you have to stand up for yourself. And again, it's not a defensive way, but it's simply stating a fact of everything that you have contributed, your ability, and just speaking your voice.
Anyone else?
I'll add in a little bit just about how I think that as women, and then especially as Asian women, we're, at least from my experience, I think our culture teaches us to be very agreeable when we're growing up. I think that not just for Asian women, I think women in general. So something that I recently learned that I found pretty interesting, I'm not sure if it's completely true, but it was about how men tend to be more disagreeable than women are. And so when it comes to being in the workplace, that actually provides an advantage for men over women. So, but one way we can combat that is just that if we tend to be overly agreeable, then learning to disagree, or learning to say no when we should say no, or when we do disagree, and being honest about how we feel. And then if we're too disagreeable, that can also be bad. So then learning to be more agreeable and be more well-liked can help you in different circumstances, different situations, depending on which quality would help you out more in achieving like whatever your purpose is.
Anyone else before I go to next question?
Yes, I would just add also a tiny bit for the professional aspect, like professional work type of thing. I think just on top of what Catherine and Rose have talked about, having a trusted mentor is also pretty important because like someone who is like maybe like a few years ahead of you, like when you have like questions or challenges, like you can trust him or her to talk through things, and then they been like probably in your shoes, and then like being able to give you like actionable like things to do after going through challenges can also be really helpful than just honing in on yourself.
Okay. All right. So we have a question here. What do you think of what Arden Cho, an Asian American actress who was on MTV Teen Wolf, experienced when she was asked to come back to be the movie, but was only offered half of what her white colleagues were being paid, and how Hollywood still treated Asian American women? Anyone? You guys think it's fair that Asian woman, I mean, that's probably looks like it's more a racist, right? That she only get half pay. No comments.
I think honestly it's incredibly unfair. I've watched Teen Wolf and I love Arden Cho, and I think she is just as good of an actress as anyone else, and so I think it's a discredit to her, all the work that she's put in over the years to become the actress and like a true Hollywood star. But it is incredibly exciting to see more and more Asian American faces on big screens. I'm sure many of us here are big fans of Shang-Chi. I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think is truly revolutionary for modern cinema. And so I think there are trailblazers, and unfortunately sometimes that means they, don't get the treatment that we would hope they deserve. But they've definitely paved the way, and they are making marks, starting to create little ripples of disruption to let people recognize that it's time for a change. This is not the status quo, and there are incredible Asian actors out there.
Would you not accepted the job if you were her? That they said, okay, half of the salary of a white. Would you say no? Or see, I think that's the problem with Asian. I think Asian would just goes, okay, because we need the Asian representation, then they would just say, oh yes, just get in first. But do you think, and here I think this question is by Vincent, and he said that actually she said no to the job. So would you do the same? Would you say no as well?
I feel like there are a lot of factors into play. I will admit that I'm not very educated in Teen Wolf, but it's tough, right? Because you want that Asian American representation, but you also want to make some sort of statement on that's like not okay. I'm not an actress or anything, and I don't think I know enough of how all that works, but if I relate it back to like career negotiation or like job negotiation, I would put in a strong bid to negotiate my contract or negotiate my pay. And if I can get it a little higher, then I could, for lack of better terms, sacrifice that a little bit so that I am on the big screen.
Okay. All right. So I know Catherine need to leave because she's another event to go to. So Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time and good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
it's California. Yeah, so let's keep in touch, and we're waiting for your good news.
Thank you.
Okay,
We'll try to make
thank
everyone
you.
proud.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, so this is a question for Vanessa. What was the most difficult question that Lianna and Dawn has stumped you with?
There are, I would say it wouldn't be like the most difficult question. It's like more like the questions that are very hard to answer right, like on your feet, I would say. Like things about, it's just like very hard to like think about the exact words and questions. But I think like things like, what is a social issue that you care about, for instance? And like as like someone who is like very detail oriented, it's just like very hard for me to like first like putting like all of my like wandering thoughts into like 1 minute sentence. And then I do remember like when I was like first like training with Lianna, and then they were saying, don't say like, and don't like, and just like when you need time to think, just don't talk. Just like remain poised and graceful until like you have like better thoughts in mind to like ingest more. Yeah. So definitely, I think that took me some time to like get used to the format of Q&A. Yeah.
Okay. And so how about this last question? So you guys mentioned about role model. So they were wondering if you guys have any Asian American men or role model in your life that you guys are able to share, or it's just personal friends that you guys don't need to share?
Sorry, what's the question? Do we have
Any
any
Asian
male?
American woman and men role model that you look up to?
I would definitely say my parents, just because they raised me and they sacrificed so much, and just seeing how strong they are and how they overcome challenges really shaped me to who I am. And reiterating what the other ladies said about having a great mentor as a role model as well. I think like Leanne and I grew up really, really shy too, and it would just like make me sweat to have to even like public speak. And I think because of that, my mom just like submitted my application for pageants without me even like being okay with it, and just kind of like forced me into it. And that actually made me go and go find a mentor to um, help me be a better, or not be scared about public speaking, and be a better and more confident version of myself. So I think, yeah, my parents and definitely my mentor is a role model to make me who I am today.
Rose?
So
I know you already said your mother, but is there anybody else?
yes, so for me, I think ooh, I just suddenly got ones. So for me, I think this is something that I discovered more during COVID. Was I watched a lot of Jeremy Lin's interviews and speeches and things like that, and he became a pretty big role model for me because he talked a lot about going through Linsanity, and then kind of like his struggles that he had after moving from different teams, and then kind of going through a lot of injuries. So he talks a lot about like resilience, talks a lot about how during like when he was the most successful, he was like the most Googled person in the world during Linsanity. But he talked about how actually during that time he wasn't really at peace with himself, and he wasn't really truly happy. And it wasn't until he went through a lot of setbacks, a lot of challenges, and feeling like he was failing, that he really discovered how to find peace like within himself. And he's also a Christian, so he talks a lot about his faith, which I think is something that can be very like a lot of people. It's not very like popular, or it's not really mainstream to talk about. But I think that he's a role model to me because that doesn't keep him from talking about what he truly is passionate about, and he doesn't really care as much about what other people think about him. He just cares about what he represents, and he tries to be a spokesperson for all Asian American kids, I guess, like us.
Vanessa?
I would say kind of similar to Chelsea, my best role models are my parents. I think specifically like mom, I think she is like a very inspiring person to me, both professionally as well as just in general, like how she was able to balance everything and able to balance both family and also career. And I think just like seeing like through like how she was able to achieve different things through her studying capabilities and also like strong willpower, just made me really realize that you know, like women can be strong as well. Yeah.
Lianna?
Oh, I was not prepared to answer this. I mean, I think if I'm not sure if I have the best answer. I've kind of, I think my role models kind of just change throughout my life, right? I think growing up, there wasn't too many like celebrities or role models I could have looked up to. I think the one at the time was like Michelle Kwan. I thought she was so like graceful and amazing and such a hard worker. But over the years and over the past couple years, I've started to look more at like leaders in the community. I mean, honestly, and not to like throw like praise to you, Esther, but you're one of them, because you've dedicated yourself to the community. I've just never seen someone so passionate about it, and someone who I can look up to and kind of like emulate like what my personal mission statement is and what I can and what I could do in the future for the Chinese American community. So.
Wow, thank you so much. Well, it's really my pleasure to know all of you, and it's my pleasure of having you guys on the panel. You guys are amazing, lady. You guys are pretty, intelligent, and I can tell you guys are great leader. We'll have a wonderful future, and it's such an honor to know you guys now. And don't forget me when you guys become way high up there. And don't forget who Auntie Esther is. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing, you know, from different perspective of your life, and very sincere. I really appreciate that. So wish you guys the best for your future, and please keep in touch. And thank you for all the attendees of joining us, and hope you enjoy listen to all these wonderful woman perspective. So have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. And we still have a few more nights of the webinar. So please go to our website, chf.us. Thank you. Thank you so much, girls. Bye. Have a good night.
Night.